How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Rising Oblivion, and welcome to 10 things you didn't know about Persona 5 Royal. So not obviously every single one of these things you might not know, but I went through and did a lot of research to try and find 10 very cool, unique facts of unused content or things that were cut out of Persona 5 Royal, unused assets, unused models, dialogue, things like that. And I tried to find 10 very unique things that maybe not everybody has heard about within this video. So drop a like if you did not know about any of these things, and let's jump right into this. So in no particular order of importance, but let's jump right to number 10, and this is Akechi's Palace. So this has probably got to be one of the bigger things within Persona 5 Royal that had been cut from it entirely. There is a lot of dialogue, unused monster assets, and unused flat-out environments that were going to be part of a palace that was going to be Akechi's Palace. So the reasons why this might have been cut is because of Dr. Maruki having his palace at the end of Persona 5 Royal. I guess just to preface, there are probably going to be spoilers within this throughout all of P5 and P5R, but more than likely this is going to be a palace that either would have been used at the very end of just regular P5 as some sort of special ending or something like that, or this was supposed to be Persona 5 Royal's very big ending where it potentially could have saved Akechi, but instead of Akechi doing his sacrifice, maybe you would have done Palace to help change him and have him join your team, or he would have sacrificed himself because you changed him in the palace. But because he's a Persona user and it sort of fits the story a little bit better, I think, to have a sacrificial character, that might have been why it was written off and not used. But there actually are demon assets of people talking about King Akechi and Master Akechi being within his palace, which I thought is super interesting. But let's jump on over to number 2, and this is Hifumi being an actual person, part of the Phantom Thieves. So Fumi would have been part of the Phantom Thieves. Not only would she have been a character that you could have, in battle, but she would have been more like Makoto in certain ways. She would have been a person that was going to do more tactical and strategy-based combat. The reason why she more than likely wasn't used was because of Makoto and because of Haru doing very similar things as to what she would have done. So instead of having her become a Phantom Thief and sort of having an odd number of female characters within the group, if you notice, the Phantom Thieves are kind of even with when it comes to males and females within the group. It would have been way too many, and it would have been kind of useless because of how Makoto was already sort of doing the thing Hifumi would have done anyway. She just became a non-playable, a non-combat, I guess you could say, confidant who still gives you some strategy-like things. Because she's a shogi player, she would have used her shogi playing skills to be, able to incorporate that within the Phantom Thieves and having their actual lineups and strategies whenever they would fight demons. Moving on over down to number 3, and this is the Morgana sports car. So Morgana would have actually had a sports car variant. I know he uses like the big van looking thing, which makes sense for a lot of people to be inside of, but he had a sports car design, and there actually are certain assets and art done for this within Persona 5 Royal of having a sports car version of Morgana. I don't really get how this could have been used. Maybe if it was like a cutscene or something like that with just a couple of the characters or something like that. Maybe like in Hawaii or something like that during like the little beach bit. Maybe he could have been in a sports car. That kind of makes sense a little bit more, but it really wouldn't have fit all of the Phantom Thieves in. By the time we see Morgana in this sort of car form, there's already a decent bit of the Phantom Thieves already there. There's already 3 or 4 people. Sports cars typically only house like 1 or 2 people, and maybe, it would have a couple in the back or something like that. Typically, most sport cars don't actually have like back seats usually, but this could have been a instance where, like I said, maybe during a cutscene, he switches to a sports car. We see at the end of Persona 5 Royal, he can switch to a helicopter, so it's not very strange to think that maybe he could have been different variations of the car, maybe at some point in the game. But I think this would have been interesting, and I really want to know the context of this. I don't think we really know any ideas of why he would have been a sports car, but he had the potential to be a sports car. It was within the game at some point or another, whether it was written off or not, it was still somewhat planned to be in the game. Alright, and moving on over to number 5, and this one's kind of sad in some ways, but this game's development had happened during the big tsunamis that had hit Japan, and typically the game was going to have a bunch of older students be driving around in a car all throughout Japan. Sounds similar, does it? Persona 5 Strikers was more than likely supposed to be similar to what Persona 5 was supposed to actually be like. The game was supposed to be more like Strikers in the fact that it would be a group of older students, you know, who could actually drive a car around. Hence why we have Morgana kind of being in a big car. They would have drove around different parts of Japan, just like how in Strikers you go to all these different locations. You know, it's not all just set in Tokyo, but you go to different locations all throughout Japan, and I think that would have been super cool to go to Kyoto and go to just all the different areas Japan has. Japan has so many cool different areas, snowy areas, mountainous areas, you know, little valleys, countrysides. It's not all just about Tokyo, but because of those tsunamis that had happened, see, I'm wrapping around to why I said that earlier, they wanted to focus the game more on the very center and heart of Japan and show how strong the heart of Japan was, because this was a period of time where Japan's morale was down. They had been beaten down pretty badly by these tsunamis, and it caused a lot of destruction, and a lot of people were trying to find a, you know, sort of thing to cope with that. And Persona 5 Royal was supposed to be that game to show them the heart of Japan and show them how places like Tokyo can be such a strong place, such a well put together place. And honestly, I really love that it was set in Tokyo, because we did get to see more of that sort of stuff in Strikers. I think Strikers looks beautiful, and I honestly think I would have liked it to have been this way, although in P6 I would like to see us driving around more spots in Japan and have it be more of a classic Persona JRPG, because Strikers isn't like that. It's more of a, you know, action-based RPG. It's not turn-based, although I'd love to see a turn-based JRPG, you know, similar I guess to what we have with S&T, right? You're going to all these different locations in Japan, kind of, in different ones anyway, but I would have liked to have that in something like P6 now, maybe, an older cast of characters. Moving on over to number 6 on our list, and this has to do with social links. So, like some of the older Persona links, if you actually did bad things and, you know, ditch out on your friends, you actually got what was called social link doubts. Your characters would actually begin to doubt you, and your confidence would actually start to revert backwards. So if you told them that you would actually go do something with them tomorrow and you didn't do that, the social links would actually revert and start to turn bad. There are actual pictures and art of this, because this was something that had originally been done in some past Persona games, so they were going to implement that into this. I'm kind of glad that's not in there. I don't really like that system, and honestly, yeah, this kind of happens in real life, and you don't completely turn on your friends because they had to cancel a plan. That happens all the time. It's a typical thing to happen. Things come up. It would really suck just because you accidentally didn't hang out with, like, you know, Haru twice and all of a sudden she hates you. You know what I mean? Things happen, so you know what? I'm kind of glad this wasn't implemented, but it would have been interesting. It definitely would have been making the game a little bit harder, which I know a lot of people complain about Royal and P5 just in general being a little too easy. So if this was implemented, the game would be realistically a good bit harder because of that. Alright, and moving on over to number 7, this is the Big Echo Karaoke bar. So, this was something that was actually supposed to be within Persona 5, just regular P5, and it would have been in Persona 5 Royal as well, but this would have been a full-on karaoke booth that you and your friends could actually go to. There are assets for this and aren't done for this, but down the line there had been plans to let you invite different friends over to play karaoke. So I don't know how this would have worked out, if characters would have been singing or would have been, you know, maybe boosting up their, you know, personas whenever you would bring them into here. What I feel like this was going to be something similar to what we have with the Jazz Club in Persona 5 Royal, where you bring a certain, you know, character there, and that then somehow ups their stats in some way, gives them more HP, gives them more magic, whatever you want to call it, MP, whatever, SP, I guess is what Persona calls it, but it would have gave them more points towards that, or potentially would have gave them more skills. So instead of just hanging out doing jazz, you would actually go and sing karaoke together, which I think would have been super cool to get all the group together and play karaoke with one another. In Persona 4 Golden, we have something like that, which is super interesting, where they get drunk, kind of, where it's actually just a placebo of them thinking they're drunk or whatever, but this would have been really cool to have had in Persona 5 Royal. And one of the biggest things about going to Japan and like going to Tokyo is doing the karaoke, man. That seems like so much fun. The karaoke stuff there seems so interesting to me, and it's definitely something that I would love to do, you know, in person. We personify, no pun intended there, ourselves through these characters when we play them and go around Japan, so I would really love to have seen something like this within Persona 5 Royal, but we still got the jazz club, we still can play billiards and darts with one another, so that's still cool, and I'm so glad we had that sort of thing there. But yeah, there was going to be the big Echo Karaoke chain that was going to be within the game. Moving on over to number 8. Now this is going to be something that is a regional difference. So on Ryuji's shoes, he actually has the, you know, Japan sigil on that, the rising sun, which is that big red bright sun that you see on his shoes. I mean, his shoes are all white with a big red sun on it, which sort of resembles what Japan's flag is. It is a imperial, you know, sort of Japan flag, and this is something that is changed. In the American versions and most of the Western versions of the game is not really touched upon when it comes to certain things like that, but over in the Korean and Chinese versions of the game, Ryuji does not have the Japanese rising sun sigil on his shoes. They are taking out because they did not want to spend Japanese imperialism over in Korea and China. Apparently that's not allowed there, it's banned. That is something that you cannot see on Ryuji's shoes in those versions of the game, which is super interesting and seems a little bit old-fashioned, like they're really doing that sort of stuff, but yeah, apparently they took that out, and it means a whole lot more because of, you know, a lot of stuff that happened during World War II with China and Korea, and how bad Japan sort of did a lot of those things to them. That flag means a little bit more to them than it does to us, but still, it's something that I think was something old-fashioned change that they don't have in the Persona 5 Royal versions in China and Korea. His shoes are just plain white looking. Alright, moving on to number 9 and number 10 here. These two are kind of funny ones. I thought, you know, I have some dark ones in here, so let's get a couple lighter ones. And this is number 9 being Mouse Akechi. So at some point they decided to actually have Mouse Akechi in the game, whether or not they were just preemptively getting all the mouse models ready, because during Shido's Palace and the different places where you would be able to turn into a mouse, Akechi's not part of the party then. He's out either for different reasons, he's not within the party, so you do not actually get to see Mouse Akechi, but there are models within Persona 5 Royal showing you Mouse Akechi, so I don't imagine this is super hard to model. It's literally like the exact same mouse model. I don't even think the colors are changed. Maybe the colors are slightly changed on some of them. I don't even think they are. And all it is just a little mouse there with the mask of the character. So I don't think this is a very hard thing for them to have done. They probably were preemptively going ahead and just getting Mouse Akechi ready. If that's something that they were going to have right into the game, or something they were going to eventually want to put in the game at some point. So that's more than likely why they had Mouse Akechi, or he was planned to be around within Shido's Palace in those different places where you could be turned into a mouse. That could have been also a thing as well. Moving on over to number 10, and that is the McDonald's in the background. So yes, there was going to actually be a McDonald's. Whether or not you could have went there, I don't know. There's the Big Bang Burger, so maybe not. I don't think you would have had to have gone to here, but there were actual assets and, you know, environmental drawings of a McDonald's in the background, which is super strange to think about, having a McDonald's within the game. More than likely, this was just somewhat of a placeholder. I don't know if this had became the Big Bang Burger, or if they were going to call it something else like Whack-Donald's. A lot of times anime have, you know, so-called McDonald's, but really they just changed the name up a little bit and call it Whack-Donald's. I don't think they could have had the actual McDonald's name within the game. That's probably not something they could have done, so more than likely that was just a placeholder or something would have changed later, or heck, it could have been the actual thing. A lot of times, you know, certain games do get away with that sort of stuff, or potentially could have had marketing or something like that, but I don't think they would have done that. I think they might have called it something different, or the fact that they put the Big Bang Burger in the game, they decided there's really no point in putting the McDonald's in the background. That's probably why they ended up not going with that in the end. But that's 10 facts you may or may not have known about Persona 5 Royal. I tried to find some ones in there that I don't think a lot of people knew about. A couple of those, like the Fumi one and some of the Akechi Palace stuff, I think a lot of people knew about that, and I just thought those were very, very big points, so I would go ahead and just talk about those. But some of those other ones I thought were kind of obscure, and I didn't know most of those. I thought that was pretty interesting to have found those. I did a pretty big, deep dive and tried to find some ones that I could put some evidence for on there. I'm going to show on the screen. You probably have already seen that already, some of the evidence to some of those big changes within the games, but hopefully this taught you something new. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this. I have a lot of different Persona videos. I know this is a little bit different compared to some of the other content that I've done, but I'd like to do a series like this where we just go into different things that could have been or could have not been within Persona 5 Royal. And I know Persona and Atlus in general do not like when you talk about that kind of stuff. Rip my boy Faz. So sorry if one of these videos get taken down. I'm not going to continue this series, but I would like to, because I feel like it's so interesting to talk about this kind of stuff within Persona 5. Just seeing what could have been, I think, is super interesting to talk about. So hopefully this video doesn't get flagged, doesn't get taken down or something like that. I really want this video to go out to you guys and not be absolute disaster, because man, Atlus decides to come down hard. But thank you all so much for watching and getting me past 2,000 subscribers. I appreciate that, you guys. I stream a lot, so click the bell to be notified whenever a new video come out or whenever I go live again. I'd love to see your pretty face there. But as always, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video.